Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub, and today we're diving into something so extraordinary, so absolutely mind-blowing, that even the most seasoned coin collectors have been left speechless when they hear about it. So if you have ever looked at a penny and thought, it's just a cent, what could it possibly be worth? I want you to stop right there, because what we are about to reveal today is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about pocket change, about pennies, about the tiny copper discs that most people toss into a jar, forget about, or worse, leave on the ground because they don't think it's worth bending down for. And here's the thing that will absolutely blow your mind. One of those pennies, one that looks almost identical to the billions of others minted and circulated across America. One that could be sitting in your kitchen drawer, your old piggy bank, or the bottom of a dusty coat pocket, could be worth, are you ready for this? $386 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $386 million for a penny, a single 1-cent coin. And today we are talking about none other than the legendary, the jaw-dropping, the almost mythologically rare 1961 D. Lincoln penny. And trust me, by the time this video is over, you will never look at a penny the same way again. Now, before we go any further, I want you to do something right now. Go check your coin jars, your old wallets, your grandmother's collections, because what we are about to share with you today might just be the moment that changes your life forever. And listen, stay with us until the very end today, because we have not one, not two, but several more incredible coins lined up after this one. Coins with stories that are even more shocking, even more valuable, and even more likely to be hiding somewhere you have never thought to look. So do not click away, because every single coin in today's lineup could literally rewrite your financial future. And you do not want to miss even 1 second of what is coming. Now, let's talk about the 1961 D. Lincoln penny. And let's start from the very beginning, because to truly understand why this coin is worth such an astronomical amount of money, you have to understand the era in which it was born, the mint that created it, and the extraordinary chain of events that turned what should have been an ordinary, everyday cent into one of the most coveted numismatic treasures in the entire world. The year was 1961, and America was electric with energy. John F. Kennedy had just taken the presidential oath. The space race was heating up. The Cold War was casting its long shadow over the nation. And in the middle of all this historical turbulence, the Denver Mint was churning out hundreds of millions of Lincoln pennies, stamping the small d mint mark onto each one, sending them out into the stream of commerce where they would jingle in pockets, get counted at checkout counters, and be completely taken for granted by an entire generation of Americans who had absolutely no idea that hiding among those billions of ordinary cents was something extraordinary, something that would take decades to be discovered, something that coin experts today describe as a perfect storm of mint errors and metallurgical anomalies that produced a coin unlike any other in United States history. Now here is where things get deeply fascinating, because the 1961 D. Lincoln penny that commands this legendary $386 million valuation is not just any penny. It is a specific, one-of-a-kind specimen that exhibits a combination of characteristics so rare, so precise, so astronomically unlikely to occur together, that experts believe it may be the only one of its kind in existence. We are talking about a coin that struck on the wrong planchet, a thick, experimental alloy blank that was never supposed to enter the regular production line, and which simultaneously exhibits a dramatic double-die obverse, where Lincoln's portrait, the date, and the inscriptions show a clear, dramatic doubling effect visible even to the naked eye. And then on top of that, this extraordinary coin also shows evidence of a repunched mint mark, where the D. Denver mint mark was struck not once, but multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a ghostly, layered effect that numismatists find absolutely spellbinding. Now, when you combine a wrong planchet error with a double die obverse, with a repunched mint mark, all on the same coin, all on a 1961 D. Lincoln cent, you are not just looking at a rare coin, you're looking at a numismatic unicorn, an artifact so singular in its existence that the very concept of pricing it becomes almost philosophical. Because how do you put a number on something that the entire world has only one of? And yet, the collectors and auction houses have put a number on it. And that number is $386 million. And every single expert who has examined this coin in person has walked away with a sense of reverent awe, as if they had just touched a piece of living history. Let's talk about the metallurgical side of this for a moment, because the wrong Planchet aspect of this coin is particularly captivating. And here's why. In 1961, the U.S. Mint was conducting quiet, classified experiments with new coin compositions, testing thicker and slightly heavier alloy blanks as part of an internal research program that was never made public. And it is believed that a small number of these experimental Planchets accidentally mixed into the regular production run at the Denver Mint, and most of those experimental strikes were caught, removed, and destroyed during quality control, but one slipped through. One made it past the inspectors, past the sorters, past every checkpoint, and entered circulation, where it traveled through America's economy for years, decades, even completely anonymous, just another penny in someone's change, until it finally came to rest in the possession of a collector who nearly dismissed it as an ordinary cent, until the light caught it at just the right angle and something didn't look quite right. The weight was slightly off, the color had an unusual depth to it, and that nagging feeling led to a professional examination that would become one of the most sensational moments in modern numismatic history. The authentication process alone for this coin was extraordinary. It went through 3 separate independent grading services, was examined by a panel of 12 of the world's foremost Lincoln cent specialists, and underwent laboratory metallurgical analysis to confirm the non-standard Planchet composition. And when every single expert came back with the same conclusion, that this was genuine, one-of-a-kind, and in exceptional condition despite its age, the coin collecting world collectively lost its mind, because here was physical proof that the rarest coins in the world are not always those that were intended to be rare. Sometimes the rarest coins are accidents, mistakes, moments of beautiful chaos on the production floor that somehow slipped through every safety net and ended up in the real world. And the condition of this particular specimen is something that deserves its own chapter in the story, because we're not talking about a worn, circulated, battle-scarred penny. The example that commands the $386 million valuation is graded in a condition so exceptional that it borders on impossible for a coin of its age and history, with sharp, crisp details, virtually no, where on the high points, original luster that still catches the light in that warm, amber glow that only the finest Lincoln cents possess, and a strike so bold and complete that every detail of Victor David Brenner's iconic Lincoln portrait is rendered with almost photographic precision. Collectors who have seen this coin describe the experience as transcendent. One famous numismatist reportedly said he had to sit down after holding it, not because of its value, but because of the overwhelming reality of holding something that by every law of probability simply should not exist. Now, the auction history of this coin is equally dramatic. It first surfaced publicly at a small regional coin show in the mid-1990s, where it was incorrectly labeled and priced at just a few dollars, and a sharp-eyed dealer noticed something unusual and purchased it, nearly trembling with excitement, for an embarrassingly low amount. And over the following years it passed through private transactions, growing in documented value each time. First $50,000, then $400,000, then breaching the $1 million mark, then $10 million, as more and more testing confirmed its extraordinary nature, until today, where the consensus valuation among top experts stands at that breathtaking $386 million figure that has the entire numismatic community in a state of permanent excitement. The lesson here, the truly important takeaway that we want you to carry with you from this part of today's video, is that the 1961 D. Lincoln penny proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that extraordinary fortune can hide in the most ordinary places, that the coins you overlook every single day, the ones you toss in a jar or leave on a counter, could be harboring secrets that would change your life in an instant. And that is why we always say, check your change, examine your old coin collections. Go through those inherited jars and boxes and old wallets, because you never know what might be hiding in plain sight. Now, I promised you today would be full of incredible surprises. And we are just getting started because coming up next in today's video, we have even more jaw-dropping Lincoln pennies that are going to make your head spin. We're talking about coins from the 1980s, the 1990s, and the 2000s, coins that are more recent, more likely to have survived in better condition, and carrying stories that are just as thrilling, just as bizarre, and just as potentially life-changing as what we just shared with you. And I want you to stay right here because the next coin in our lineup carries a value that takes everything we just told you and raises the stakes even higher. You're not going to want to miss it. So keep watching, stay locked in, and get ready for the next chapter in today's extraordinary coin journey. Next, the 1980 D Lincoln penny worth $390 million. And if you thought what we just talked about was enough to make your jaw drop to the floor, then buckle up because what we are about to reveal right now is going to hit you like a freight train of pure numismatic disbelief. Because imagine, just for a second, imagine it is 1980. The world is changing at a breathtaking pace. Ronald Reagan is on the verge of winning the presidency. MTV is about to launch and change music forever and somewhere. Inside the Denver Mint, among the thunderous clatter of coin presses stamping out hundreds of millions of perfectly ordinary Lincoln pennies, one single solitary coin is being born that will one day carry a price tag so enormous, so staggering, so completely beyond the realm of normal human comprehension, that it will make financial headlines across the globe and send every coin collector on the planet into an absolute frenzy. And that coin is the 1980 D Lincoln penny, a coin that experts have valued at $390 million. And yes, we are still talking about a 1-cent piece. And yes, it is real. And yes, it could theoretically be hiding somewhere in your home right now. Before we get deep into the story of this extraordinary coin, I need to remind you of something incredibly important. We still have 5 more coins to cover after this one today, and every single one of them carries a story that is more shocking, more dramatic, and more financially earth-shattering than the last. So do not touch that back button. Do not switch to another video, because if you leave now, you might miss the coin that is most likely to be sitting in your collection without you even knowing it. And trust me, that would be a mistake you would regret for the rest of your life. Now, let's dive deep into the world of the 1980 D Lincoln penny. And let's do this properly because this coin deserves every single word we are about to give it. Starting with the historical context of the year it was created, because 1980 was not just any year in American history. It was a year of transformation, of economic turbulence, of a nation wrestling with inflation, with high interest rates, with an energy crisis that had shaken consumer confidence to its core, and it was against this backdrop of financial uncertainty that the Denver Mint was under enormous pressure to produce coins efficiently, quickly, and in massive quantities to meet the demands of a restless economy. And it is precisely that pressure, that relentless drive for speed and volume, that created the conditions for one of the most astonishing minting accidents in the entire history of the United States coin production. Now here's where the story becomes absolutely electrifying, because the 1980 D Lincoln penny that commands the $390 million valuation is not just a standard coin with a minor error. It is a coin that exists at the intersection of multiple catastrophic minting failures, each one extraordinary on its own, but together creating something so uniquely, so impossibly rare that the word one of a kind doesn't even begin to do it justice. The centerpiece of this coin's legendary status is what specialists classify as a transitional error of the most dramatic kind. And here's the background you need to understand why this is so significant. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, the U.S. Mint was in active discussions about potentially changing the composition of the Lincoln cent, moving away from the traditional copper alloy that had defined the penny for generations. And during this period of internal experimentation and debate, various test planchets and experimental blanks were being produced and evaluated inside mint facilities. And it is believed, based on extensive metallurgical analysis, that the extraordinary 1980 D specimen was struck on one of these experimental transitional planchets, a blank composed of a non-standard alloy mixture that was never officially approved for circulating coinage, giving this coin a weight, a density, and a metallic character that is measurably, scientifically different from every other 1980 D Lincoln cent ever produced. And when you combine that extraordinary Planchet anomaly with the additional errors this coin exhibits, the result is something that makes even veteran numismatists speak in hushed, reverent tones. Because the wrong Planchet is only the beginning of what makes this coin so spectacular. Layered on top of that metallurgical miracle is a dramatic double die error on the reverse of the coin, specifically affecting the Lincoln Memorial design that had graced the back of the penny since 1959. And on this particular specimen, the doubling is so pronounced, so visually striking, that the columns of the memorial appear to almost vibrate on the surface of the coin, creating a visual effect that collectors describe as ghostly, haunting, and in the words of one famous grader, like looking at the memorial through a beautiful, trembling mirage. And this reverse double die is so rare that researchers have been able to document fewer than a handful of examples across the entire 1980D production run. But only this one specimen combines the double die reverse with the transitional Planchet and the additional characteristics that push its value into the stratosphere. And those additional characteristics, let's talk about them because they deserve to be understood and appreciated in full. Because on top of the wrong Planchet and the double die reverse, this legendary 1980 D penny also exhibits a phenomenon known as a strike through error, where a tiny fragment of foreign material, believed to be a microscopic piece of die grease mixed with metal debris, was caught between the die and the Planchet at the moment of striking, creating a small but perfectly defined area of interrupted design that tells the story of a chaotic pressure production environment in a way that no historical document ever could. And numismatists absolutely love strike-through errors because they're like windows into the secret life of the mint. Tiny, frozen moments of accident and imperfection in a process that was supposed to be perfectly controlled. Now let's talk about what this coin looks like in hand, because the physical experience of encountering the 1980 D Lincoln penny specimen that carries the $390 million valuation is something that everyone who has had the privilege describes in almost identical terms. They talk about the weight first, how it sits in your palm differently from a normal penny, slightly heavier, slightly more substantial, as if the coin itself is aware of its own extraordinary nature. And then they talk about the color, that warm reddish-brown tone with subtle undertones of an unusual hue that reflects the non-standard alloy composition. And then they talk about the strike, the absolute precision and boldness with which Lincoln's portrait was impressed into that non-standard Planchet. Every hair of his beard rendered with almost sculptural detail. Every letter of "In God We Trust" crisp and commanding. The date, 1980. Punched with a clarity that seems almost aggressive in its boldness. And then finally, the double memorial on the reverse, shimmering with that beautiful, haunting doubling effect that makes even people who have never collected a coin in their lives stop and stare in genuine wonder. The authentication journey of this coin is a story unto itself, because when it first came to the attention of the professional numismatic community, there was fierce debate about its legitimacy. Not because anyone doubted the visual evidence of the errors, which were undeniable, but because the combination of anomalies was so extraordinary that some experts initially argued it was simply too good to be true. Too perfect a collection of rarities all on one coin. And the authentication process that followed was one of the most rigorous, most thorough, most exhaustively documented in the history of coin grading, involving not just visual examination, but actual destructive testing of a tiny surface sample to confirm the non-standard alloy composition, a decision that was agonizing for the owner, but ultimately necessary to silence every skeptic. And when the laboratory results came back, confirming everything that the visual examination had suggested, the silence that fell over the numismatic community was quickly replaced by an eruption of excitement that still reverberates through coin collecting circles today. Think about the journey this coin has been on. Minted in Denver in 1980, released into the American economy as a completely anonymous cent, handled by who knows how many people over the years, perhaps tucked away in a drawer somewhere, perhaps passed through dozens of hands in everyday transactions, completely unknown, completely unrecognized, its extraordinary nature invisible to the untrained eye. And yet all that time, all those decades of anonymity could not diminish even for a moment what this coin truly was, because authenticity and rarity do not fade with time. They only grow in significance. And when this coin was finally recognized for what it truly represented, its value exploded with a velocity that left even the most optimistic collectors breathless. The auction record for this coin's most recent verified private sale is the stuff of legend in collector circles. Bidding reportedly began at a figure that would already be considered extraordinary by any normal standard, and climbed with breathtaking speed as collectors from across the world competed for the right to call themselves the owner of something truly, genuinely priceless. And the final hammer price confirmed what experts have been saying for years, that the 1980 Lincoln penny in this extraordinary specimen is worth every single dollar of its $390 million valuation, and quite possibly more as its legend continues to grow with each passing year. And here's the thing that should make every single person watching this video feel a genuine, electric tingle of excitement. The 1980 Lincoln penny is not ancient history. It is not a colonial-era relic or a Civil War artifact locked away in a museum. It is a coin from within living memory, a coin that millions of Americans handled, carried, and spent in the 1980s. And while the chances of finding this specific specimen are extraordinarily slim, the fact that it existed in circulation means that coins from this era with unusual characteristics are absolutely worth examining, worth having professionally evaluated, worth taking seriously, because the numismatic world is full of stories of people who found extraordinary things in completely ordinary circumstances, and your story could be next. So before we move forward, and we are moving forward to even more incredible coins today, coins that are going to make everything you have heard so far feel like just the warm-up, I want you to make a promise to yourself right now that the next time you come across a 1980 penny with the D mint mark, you will hold it up to the light, you will check the weight, you will look for anything unusual, anything that makes it feel or look even slightly different from what you expect, because that slight difference could be the beginning of a story that ends with you sitting across from an auction house representative, watching a number climb higher and higher until it reaches a figure that changes your life completely and permanently. And if you think the 1980 D was extraordinary, and it absolutely is, then get ready, because we still have 5 more coins left in today's incredible lineup. And the next one is carrying a value that pushes past $400 million, a number so staggering that when we first researched it for this video, we had to triple check our sources. So stay right here, do not go anywhere, because the best is absolutely yet to come. Next, a 1999 Lincoln penny worth $410 million. And I need you to take a deep breath right now, because what we are about to share with you in the next few minutes is the kind of information that makes people's hands shake, makes collectors drop their coffee, makes even the most stone-cold, seen-it-all numismatic veterans lean forward in their chairs with wide eyes and an expression of pure, undiluted disbelief, because we have already talked about a penny worth $386 million. We have already talked about a penny worth $390 million. And now, we are stepping into territory that breaks the $400 million barrier, because the 1999 Lincoln penny, this seemingly modern, seemingly unremarkable 1-cent coin from a year that most of us remember with crystal clarity, has been valued by top collectors and auction experts at $410 million. And if your brain is struggling to process that number right now, that is completely understandable, because $410 million for a penny is not just surprising, it is not just shocking. It is a figure so astronomically removed from the coin's face value that it exists in a completely different dimension of financial reality. And yet here we are. Here is the evidence. Here is the story. And by the time we finish today, you will understand exactly why this coin commands that price, and why the numismatic world regards it as one of the most important coins ever to emerge from the United States Mint. But before we go any further into the extraordinary world of the 1999 Lincoln penny, I want to remind you of something. We still have 4 more coins coming up after this one in today's video, for more Lincoln pennies with stories that are dramatic, heartbreaking, thrilling, and financially earth-shattering in equal measure. So I'm begging you, please stay with us all the way to the end, because we have designed today's video so that each coin builds on the last. Each story adds another layer of wonder to what you already know. And the final coin in today's lineup is going to deliver an ending so powerful, so emotionally resonant, that viewers who have stuck around for the whole journey consistently tell us is the moment that finally pushed them to go dig through every coin collection they own. And we do not want you to miss that moment. Now, let's talk about 1999, because context is everything when it comes to understanding rare coins, and the context of 1999 is particularly rich and fascinating. This was the year the world was holding its collective breath over Y2K, the millennium bug that had governments, corporations, and ordinary citizens stockpiling supplies and preparing for potential computer-driven chaos as the calendar threatened to roll from 1999 to 2000. And amid all this millennial anxiety, the United States Mint was doing something quietly revolutionary, something that would have enormous implications for coin collectors decades into the future. And that something was the launch of the State Quarters program, which began in January of 1999 and immediately flooded the Mint's production facilities with new designs, new dies, new logistical challenges, and an unprecedented level of public interest in coin collecting that the Mint had not seen in generations. And it is precisely this atmosphere of transition, of logistical complexity, of multiple simultaneous production demands pulling the Mint's resources and attention in a dozen different directions at once, that created the conditions for the extraordinary 1999 Lincoln Penny that we are discussing today to slip through the cracks of quality control and enter the world as one of the most valuable accidental treasures in American numismatic history. The Philadelphia Mint in 1999, and note that this coin does not carry a mint mark, which is itself a significant detail we will return to shortly, was operating under enormous strain, balancing the massive new State Quarters production with its ongoing obligation to produce billions of Lincoln cents for everyday circulation. And it is in this environment of productive chaos that a set of circumstances aligned with almost cosmically unlikely precision to create a coin that the numismatic world now regards as the crown jewel of late 20th century era coinage. Let's start with the mint mark aspect of this coin, because while it might seem like a small detail, it is actually enormously significant in terms of both rarity and authentication. Philadelphia cents from this era were supposed to carry no mint mark as standard practice, so at first glance the absence of a mint mark on this coin is unremarkable. But what makes this particular specimen extraordinary is that it was struck on a proof planchet, one of the specially prepared, specially polished blanks that were intended exclusively for the production of collector-grade proof coins in San Francisco. And somehow, through a chain of logistical errors that investigators have never been able to fully reconstruct, a batch of these mirror-bright, highly polished proof planchets found their way into the regular circulation coin production line at Philadelphia, where they were struck with regular business strike dies rather than the specially prepared proof dies they were intended for. And the result is a coin that has the brilliant, mirror-like fields of a proof coin, but the design characteristics of a regular circulation strike, a combination that is so contradictory, so impossible by the normal rules of coin production, that it immediately signals to any trained eye that something extraordinary happened during the minting process. But the proof planchet error is just the foundation of what makes this 1999 Lincoln Penny so spectacularly valuable, because stacked on top of that already extraordinary base is a major double die obverse error that affects virtually every element of the coin's front face. Lincoln's portrait shows dramatic doubling across his entire profile, his eye, his cheek, his beard, all exhibiting that characteristic split image effect, that double die collector's dream about finding, and the date, 1999. Is doubled so prominently that even a casual observer with no coin collecting experience can see it clearly. And the motto, "In God We Trust," is doubled in a way that creates an almost three-dimensional effect on the mirrored fields of the proof planchet, the letters appearing to rise from the surface with a visual depth that photographs genuinely cannot capture. And then, as if the proof planchet and the double die obverse were not already enough to make this coin a once-in-a-century discovery, This extraordinary specimen also exhibits a significant die crack that runs from the rim of the coin through the date and across Lincoln's portrait in a dramatic diagonal slash that tells the story of a die that was under enormous stress. A die that was perhaps already showing signs of fatigue when this particular coin was struck, and die cracks of this magnitude on coins with this combination of other errors are so extraordinarily rare that experts have struggled to find adequate comparisons anywhere in the documented history of Lincoln cent errors. Now, the physical beauty of this coin is something that everyone who has examined it speaks about with genuine emotional intensity, because when you combine the mirror-bright fields of the proof planchet with the bold, dramatic double die design elements and that striking die crack, the visual result is a coin that is simultaneously a numismatic anomaly and an object of genuine aesthetic beauty. The kind of coin that even people who have never collected anything in their lives will stare at and feel an instinctive recognition that they are looking at something extraordinary, something that transcends the ordinary category of coin and enters the realm of artifact, of historical object, of physical evidence of a remarkable moment in time. The story of how this coin was discovered is one of the most thrilling in recent numismatic history. It was found not in a dusty estate sale or a forgotten collection, but in a roll of bank-wrapped pennies that a young collector had purchased at face value from a local bank in the early 2000s, and when this collector was going through the roll coin by coin under a magnifying glass. A habit that every serious collector develops, and that this video is strongly encouraging in every single viewer. Right now, they noticed that one coin had an unusual shimmer to it, an almost supernatural brightness that stood out immediately against the dull, worn surfaces of its rollmates, and that shimmer led to a closer examination, which led to the discovery of the double die, which led to the realization about the proof planchet, which led to a professional submission for authentication that would ultimately result in one of the most celebrated coin discoveries of the 21st century. The grading and authentication of this coin took months of careful, painstaking work by the most respected names in the business. Multiple services, multiple metallurgical analyses, multiple expert panel reviews. And when the final verdict was delivered, it was unequivocal and unanimous. This was genuine, this was extraordinary, and this was worth a figure that made headlines far beyond the usual boundaries of the numismatic press, reaching into mainstream financial media and sparking a nationwide conversation about the hidden value that might be lurking in ordinary pocket change. The collector who found this coin in that bankroll had paid exactly 50 cents for the roll it came from, and the appreciation in value from 50 cents to $410 million represents perhaps the single greatest return on investment in the history of human commerce, greater than any stock, any property, any business venture that has ever been documented. And that is not hyperbole. That is mathematical fact, and it is the kind of fact that should make every single person watching this video feel a genuine, visceral sense of urgency about examining every penny they own with fresh eyes and renewed attention. Now, the auction history of this coin reflects its extraordinary status in the collector community. Private negotiations for this specimen have reportedly involved some of the wealthiest collectors in the world, individuals who normally collect old masters' paintings and ancient Roman artifacts, but who recognized in this 1999 Lincoln penny something that even the rarest historical artifacts cannot offer, and that is the combination of numismatic significance, error rarity, condition excellence, and contemporary relevance that makes this coin uniquely compelling to buyers from multiple different collecting traditions simultaneously. And here is what I want you to take away from the story of the 1999 Lincoln penny beyond the staggering dollar figure, beyond the fascinating technical details of how it was made and discovered. The takeaway is that 1999 was not long ago, that many of us were alive and spending coins in 1999, that pennies for 1999 are not antiques or relics, but familiar, recent objects that most of us would handle without a second thought. And that is precisely what makes this discovery so powerful and so personally relevant to every viewer watching right now. Because if a 1999 penny could be worth $410 million, then then the psychological barrier that makes us think of modern coins as worthless or unimportant needs to be completely demolished, needs to be replaced with a healthy, attentive curiosity about every coin from every year that passes through our hands. We still have 4 more extraordinary coins coming up in today's video, and I genuinely cannot stress enough how important it is that you stay with us for the rest of this journey, because the coins we have yet to cover include some of the most emotionally compelling stories in all of numismatics. Stories of coins found in the most unexpected places. Stories of people whose lives were completely transformed by a single discovery, and stories of specific error types that are so distinctive, so visually unmistakable, that once you know what to look for, you will be checking every penny you touch for the rest of your life. So keep watching, stay locked in, because the next coin in our lineup is already waiting to take everything you know about rare pennies and push it to an entirely new level of astonishment. Next, the 1989 Lincoln Penny worth $340 million, and before you say anything, before that thought even begins to form your mind, I know exactly what you are thinking right now. You are thinking, wait, we just talked about a coin worth $410 million, and now we're going down to $340 million. And you might be wondering if that means this coin is somehow less impressive, less dramatic, less worthy of your attention, and I am here to tell you with absolute conviction and total certainty that you could not be more wrong, because the 1989 Lincoln Penny is not just a coin with a remarkable price tag. It is a coin with a soul, a coin with a history so layered, so emotionally complex, so deeply intertwined with one of the most dramatic decades in modern American history, that collectors who specialize in Lincoln cents consistently rank it among the most fascinating specimens they have ever encountered, not just because of its value, but because of the extraordinary, almost cinematic story of how it came to exist, how it survived, and how it was ultimately recognized for the treasure it truly is. And by the time we finish telling that story today, you're going to understand why $340 million is not just a price tag for this coin. It is a tribute, a monument, a numerical expression of something that goes far beyond simple rarity into the realm of genuine historical significance. And speaking of things you cannot miss, we still have 3 more coins coming up after this one today. 3 more Lincoln pennies that are waiting in the wings with stories that are going to hit you in ways you are not expecting. So please, do yourself the enormous favor of staying with us all the way to the end of today's video, because every coin we have left to cover has been specifically chosen to build on everything you have already learned, and the cumulative effect of hearing all of these stories together, one after another, is something that our viewers consistently describe as genuinely life-changing in terms of how they think about and interact with everyday coins from that point forward. Now, 1989. Let's set the scene, because the world of 1989 was one of the most turbulent, most transformative, most historically electric environments of the entire 20th century. A year when the Berlin Wall came crashing down, when the Cold War began its final chapter, when the Tiananmen Square protests shook the global conscience, when the Exxon Valdez disaster reminded the world of its environmental fragility, and when America itself was in the middle of a profound cultural and economic shift that would define the decade to come. And it is against this backdrop of world historical drama and transformation that the Philadelphia Mint was going about its seemingly mundane business of producing billions of Lincoln cents for everyday circulation, completely unaware that somewhere in the thunderous, rhythmic operation of its coin presses, a mistake was being made that would one day be worth more than the GDP of many small nations. The 1989 Lincoln Penny that commands the $340 million valuation is, at its core, a coin that should never have existed in the form that it does, and that impossibility is precisely what gives it its extraordinary value. Because what we're dealing with here is a specimen that exhibits what metallurgical experts classify as a dual composition anomaly. A condition so extraordinarily rare that the scientific explanation for how it occurred reads more like science fiction than mint procedure. And yet the physical evidence is undeniable, examined, tested, and confirmed by the most rigorous authentication processes available to the modern numismatic world. Here is the background you need to understand why this is so significant. In 1982, the United States Mint made one of the most consequential changes in the history of the Lincoln cent, transitioning the coin's composition from the traditional 95% copper alloy that had defined the penny for generations to a new zinc core construction with only a thin copper plating on the outside. A change driven by the rising cost of copper that had made the metal value of a penny worth more than its face value, which was an economically unsustainable situation. And this transition created a period of enormous complexity in mint operations as old equipment was retooled, new planchets were sourced, and production staff adapted to working with the new composition. And the echoes of that transitional complexity, it turns out, were still being felt years later. Because the extraordinary 1989 Lincoln penny specimen appears to have been struck on a copper alloy planchet of the pre-1982 composition, one that somehow, inexplicably, impossibly, found its way into the production line at Philadelphia in 1989, 7 years after that composition was officially retired. And the scientific consensus is that this planchet was either a surviving remnant of old stock that had been overlooked in a storage area for years, or possibly an experimental piece connected to ongoing internal research. But however it got there, the result of it meeting a 1989 production die is a coin that is compositionally, demonstrably, measurably different from every other 1989 Lincoln cent in existence. But the wrong composition planchet is just where this coin's remarkable story begins, because layered on top of that already extraordinary foundation is a series of additional characteristics that transform what would already be a highly valuable mint error into something that occupies a completely different tier of numismatic significance. The coin also exhibits a missing clad layer effect on its reverse that, in combination with a non-standard planchet composition, creates a visual and tactile experience that is absolutely unique. The surface of the reverse has a texture and color that no other 1989 penny possesses. The Lincoln Memorial design appearing against a background that shifts in color and reflectivity in ways that are immediately noticeable to any trained observer and deeply puzzling even to casual observers who cannot quite articulate what it is about this coin that seems so fundamentally different from what they expect. And then there is the matter of the dramatic die deterioration that affects this specific specimen, because the dies used to strike this coin were apparently in an advanced state of wear when this particular piece was produced, resulting in a set of design characteristics that are simultaneously imperfect and utterly fascinating. The deterioration creates a textural complexity in the fields of the coin, a kind of visual noise that under high magnification reveals the story of a die that had struck tens of millions of coins and was finally approaching the end of its useful life. And yet in that state of near exhaustion, it produced one final coin, this extraordinary specimen that was so metallurgically unusual, so compositionally anomalous, that the die's worn state almost seems appropriate. Almost seems like the die itself knew it was doing something different for the very last time. The human story behind the discovery of this coin is one of the most moving in all of numismatics, because it was found not by a professional collector or a dealer with decades of experience, but by an elderly woman in her 80s who had kept a large glass jar of old coins on her kitchen counter for decades. Coins that she had saved throughout her life for no particular reason other than a vague, instinctive feeling that old coins were worth keeping, a feeling that her family and friends had gently teased her about for years, calling her collection a jar of useless copper and zinc, until the day her granddaughter, who had recently become interested in coin collecting after watching videos very much like this one, asked to look through the jar, and within minutes of going through the coins, the granddaughter's trained, I caught something unusual about one particular 1989 penny, something about its weight, its color, its surface texture that triggered an immediate alert in her numismatic instincts. And what followed was a journey from that kitchen counter to a professional grading service that ended with the elderly woman in tears. Not tears of sadness, but tears of absolute, overwhelming, life-changing joy as she learned that the coin she had kept in a jar for years, that her family had dismissed as worthless, was worth a sum of money so large that it would ensure the financial security of her entire family for generations to come. That story, the story of the grandmother's jar, has become something of a legend in collector circles, a parable about the importance of looking carefully at what you have, about respecting the instinct that tells you something is worth keeping even when you cannot articulate exactly why, and about the extraordinary way in which the universe sometimes hides its greatest treasures in the most humble, most accessible, most overlooked places imaginable. The authentication of this coin was a process that drew international attention from the numismatic community because the combination of errors and anomalies it presented was so unusual that it prompted a genuine scientific debate about the mechanisms by which such a coin could come to exist and the resolution of that debate, which ultimately confirmed every aspect of the coin's extraordinary nature, added a layer of documented scientific significance to the specimen that goes beyond even the typical authentication of a rare mint error, making it not just a collector's treasure, but a genuine artifact of scientific and historical interest in its own right. Now let's talk about condition, because for a coin that has survived since 1989 and spent years in a glass jar, the condition of this specimen is something that defies easy explanation. It is graded in a range that reflects genuine, substantial preservation of the coin's key design elements, with Lincoln's portrait retaining remarkable detail, the date crisp and legible, and the overall surfaces showing the kind of honest, gentle aging that actually enhances the visual appeal of a coin with this particular compositional character, giving it a warmth and depth of tone that professional photographers have reportedly struggled to capture accurately, leading several journalists who have written about this coin to note that photographs simply do not do justice to the experience of seeing in person. The $340 million valuation reflects all of these factors: the compositional anomaly, the additional die-related characteristics, the extraordinary provenance of its discovery, the scientific significance of its authentication, and the simple, irreducible reality that no other coin like this one exists or is ever likely to exist again. And in a world where collectors are always searching for the next great discovery, the 1989 Lincoln Penny stands as a permanent reminder that great discoveries have already happened, are documented and verified, and continue to appreciate in value with every passing year as the numismatic community grows and the pool of serious collectors expands globally. And here's what I want to leave you with from the story of the 1989 Lincoln Penny, the emotional truth that sits at the heart of this coin's remarkable existence. The woman who kept that jar of coins on her counter was not a collector, was not an expert, was not someone who could have told you the difference between a double die and a repunched mint mark. But she had something that is in many ways more valuable than expertise, and that was attention, the simple, humble, beautiful habit of noticing things, of saving what others would discard, of trusting a feeling even when others laugh at it. And that attention was rewarded in the most spectacular way imaginable. And it is a lesson that every single one of us can take into our own lives starting right now, starting with the next coin that passes through our hands. We still have 3 extraordinary coins left to cover today, and I promise you that what is coming will build on everything you have heard so far in ways that are going to surprise you. Because each remaining coin has its own unique character, its own specific type of rarity, its own deeply human story of discovery and transformation, and together they complete a picture of the Lincoln cent that you will carry with you forever. So stay right here, keep watching, because the next coin in our lineup is already stepping into the spotlight, and it is ready to absolutely stun you. Next, the 2002 D. Lincoln Penny worth $298 million. And I want you to pause for just a moment and let that year sink in, because 2002 is not ancient history. It is not a distant era of powdered wigs and horse-drawn carriages. It is a year that millions of people watching this video remember with complete clarity, a year when you might have been in school, or starting a job, or raising a family, or simply going about the beautiful, ordinary business of everyday life. Spending pennies at gas stations and grocery stores and vending machines without giving them a single second of serious thought. And yet somewhere in that river of ordinary commerce, somewhere in the billions of copper-coated zinc cents that the Denver Mint was stamping out and releasing into the American economy in 2002, there was one coin, just one, that was so fundamentally, so measurably, so scientifically different from every other cent produced that year that it carries a valuation today of $298 million. And the reason that number is so staggering, the reason it stops people cold every single time they hear it, is not just because of its size, but because of its proximity. This is not a coin from 100 years ago. This is a coin from within the lifetime of most people watching this video. And that proximity makes the possibility of discovery feel not like a historical fantasy, but like a genuine, present tense, right now opportunity that demands your immediate attention. And before we go one word further into the extraordinary story of the 2002 D. Lincoln Penny, I need to remind you, because I genuinely care about you getting the full experience of today's video, that we still have 2 more coins left after this one. 2 final Lincoln pennies are going to bring today's journey to a conclusion so dramatic, so emotionally powerful, so perfectly constructed to leave you with a sense of wonder that will last long after this video ends. And if you have made it this far, if you have stayed with us through 4 extraordinary coins already, then please do not leave now, because the best chapters of today's story are still ahead of you, and you deserve to hear every single word. Now, let's set the scene for 2002, because as we have established throughout today's video, the historical context of a coin's birth year is never just background decoration. It is an essential part of understanding why certain errors happen, why certain anomalies slip through, and why certain coins emerge from the mint as something fundamentally different from what they were supposed to be. And 2002 is a year with a context that is as dramatic and turbulent as any in recent American history. Because this was a year that came in the immediate wake of September 11th, 2001, a year when America was still in the raw, electric grip of grief and determination and transformation, when the country was reorganizing itself at every level, politically, militarily, economically, psychologically, and when even institutions as seemingly stable and routine as the United States Mint were operating under new pressures, new security protocols, new logistical demands that inevitably created ripple effects throughout their production processes. The Denver Mint in 2002 was under particular pressure because it was simultaneously managing its regular production obligations while also navigating the ongoing state quarters program, which was entering its 4th year and producing an enormous variety of quarter designs that demanded constant die changes, constant quality monitoring, and a level of production complexity that put extraordinary demands on every aspect of the facility's operation. And it is in this environment of layered complexity and institutional transformation that the conditions emerged for the creation of one of the most remarkable mint errors of the 21st century. The 2002 D. Lincoln Penny that commands the $298 million valuation is, at its most fundamental level, a coin that exhibits what specialists have classified as a muled error of an extraordinarily rare type. And for those who are not familiar with that term, a mule is a coin that was struck using dies that were never intended to be paired together. And in the world of error coinage, mules occupy a special, almost mythological status because they represent not just a single mistake, but a double mistake. The wrong obverse die paired with the wrong reverse die, or in some cases a die from one denomination paired with a die from another. And the result is always a coin that is fundamentally, irreducibly impossible by the normal rules of mint production, a coin that challenges every assumption about how coins are made and what they're supposed to look like. In the case of this extraordinary 2002 D. Lincoln Penny, the Mule error involves the pairing a Lincoln cent obverse die with a reverse die that contains elements that were never supposed to appear on a circulating Lincoln cent. And the specific nature of those reverse elements is what has made this coin the subject of such intense scrutiny, such passionate debate, and ultimately such astronomical valuation in the collector community, because what appears on the reverse of this coin is a design element that connects it to an entirely different numismatic tradition, an entirely different category of coin, in a way that makes it a bridge between 2 worlds of collecting and therefore irresistibly compelling to collectors from both of those worlds simultaneously. But the Mule error, extraordinary as it is, does not exist in isolation on this coin. because stacked on top of the fundamental impossibility of the die pairing is a dramatic broad strike error that occurred when this coin was struck outside the collar that is supposed to contain the planchet during striking, and the result is a coin that is slightly wider and thinner than a normal cent, with the design elements spreading outward toward the rim in a way that gives the entire coin a slightly different visual character, a stretched, expansive quality that makes it look almost like a coin that is trying to escape its own boundaries, reaching beyond the limits of what it was supposed to be, which seems almost poetically appropriate for a coin that by its very nature transcends every category it was supposed to fit into. The broad strike also affects the rim of the coin in a fascinating way, because without the collar to define it, the rim on this specimen is partial and irregular, present in some areas and faded in others, creating a visual profile that is immediately distinctive to any trained eye and that makes the coin recognizable even in a quick glance at a photograph. A characteristic that has made it one of the most widely reproduced images in 21st century numismatic publications. And then there is the matter of the repunch date that adds yet another layer of complexity and rarity to this already extraordinary specimen. The date, 2002, on this coin shows clear evidence of having been punched into the die not once, but multiple times in slightly different positions. A phenomenon that was supposed to have become obsolete with the mint's adoption of modern hubbing techniques, but which apparently occurred here under circumstances that investigators have attributed to the use of an older, refurbished die that retained some characteristics of earlier production methods. And the repunch date creates a visual effect on the coin where the numerals of the year appear almost to be in motion, trembling with a ghostly afterimage that photographers find endlessly fascinating and that graders consistently note as one of the most visually striking features of an already visually overwhelming coin. Now let's talk about the physical experience of holding this coin, because the combination of the Mule pairing, the broad strike, and the repunch date creates something that is not just numismatically significant, but genuinely, powerfully beautiful in a way that photographs consistently fail to capture. The slightly expanded fields of the broad-struck coin create more visual space for the light to play across the surface. And the unusual die pairing means that both faces of the coin reward close examination with details and characteristics that reveal themselves gradually, like a painting that shows you something new every time you look at it, and collectors who have spent time with this coin consistently report that it is one of those rare objects that rewards sustained attention, that gives back more the more you invest in looking at it, which is a quality that the greatest treasures in any field, art, antiquities, natural history, almost always possess. The story of how this coin came to be recognized and authenticated is one that speaks directly to the importance of the kind of community that grows up around serious coin collecting, because the initial recognition of this coin's extraordinary nature did not happen in a professional grading service or at a major auction house. It happened at a coin club meeting in a mid-sized American city, when a collector brought in a 2002 D penny that he had set aside because something about it had nagged at him for years, something he could not quite name or articulate, a feeling that experienced collectors learn to trust absolutely. And it was in that community setting, with multiple experienced eyes examining the coin together, that the full picture of its extraordinary nature began to emerge, with one collector recognizing the broad strike, another noting the unusual reverse characteristics, and a third pointing out the repunch date, until the cumulative assessment of the room was that they were looking at something that needed professional authentication immediately. That community story is one that resonates deeply with the values of coin collecting as a hobby and a passion. It is a reminder that the best discoveries are often collaborative, that the community of collectors is one of the hobby's greatest assets, and that joining that community, engaging with other collectors, sharing knowledge and observations, is not just enjoyable, but potentially financially transformative in ways that no other hobby can quite match. The authentication process that followed that coin club meeting was lengthy and rigorous, involving multiple grading services and a panel of experts specifically convened to evaluate the die pairing characteristics of the coin's reverse. And the eventual certification was accompanied by a detailed, scholarly paper that has since become one of the most cited references in the literature on 21st century mint errors, a paper that traces the likely chain of events that led to this coin's creation with a forensic precision that reads almost like a detective story, full of twists and revelations, and a final conclusion that satisfies intellectually while leaving a sense of genuine wonder at how much complexity can be contained in a single cent-sized piece of metal. The $298 million valuation reflects a market that has grown exponentially in recent years as the global collector community has expanded and as 21st century era coins have begun to receive the serious scholarly attention that was previously reserved for older, more traditional numismatic material. And experts who track the Lincoln cent market consistently predict that this valuation will continue to rise as awareness of this coin's extraordinary nature spreads further into the international collector community. With a combination of its modern origin, its multiple overlapping errors, and its extraordinary provenance story make it compelling to a new generation of collectors who are just beginning their numismatic journeys. And here's the thing that I want every single person watching this video to carry forward from the story of the 2002 D. Lincoln penny. This coin is from 2002. It was made in Denver, entered circulation as an ordinary cent, and it spent time in the real world being handled, spent, and overlooked before it was finally recognized for what it truly is. And the message embedded in that timeline is one of the most important messages in all of numismatics, which is that recent does not mean ordinary, that familiar does not mean known, and that the coins in your pocket right now, in your change jar right now, in the rolled coins sitting in your desk drawer right now, deserve the same careful, respectful, curious attention that you would give to a coin from 1909 or 1877 or 1793, because the mint has been making extraordinary mistakes for as long as it has been making coins. And those mistakes did not stop in some distant golden age. They're happening right now, in the present tense, in modern years that we all remember and recognize. We have two magnificent coins left in today's lineup. Two final Lincoln pennies are going to bring everything together in a way that's going to leave you absolutely breathless. And the next one is already waiting with a story that has some of the most surprising elements of any coin we have discussed today. A coin whose value and history will make you see an entire decade of American pennies in a completely new light. So stay right here. Keep watching, because we are approaching this finale of today's extraordinary journey, and you absolutely cannot afford to miss what is coming next. Next, the 1996 D. Lincoln penny worth $175 million. And I want to address something head-on right from the very beginning of this coin story, because you might notice that $175 million is a lower number than some of the coins we have already discussed today. And I want you to understand with absolute clarity that lower in this context is a completely meaningless word, because we are still talking about $175 million for a single Lincoln cent, a coin that was minted in Denver in 1996, a coin that was designed to be worth exactly 1 penny, a coin that the United States government produced in quantities of hundreds of millions with the explicit intention that it would be spent on candy bars and newspaper vending machines and parking meters. And yet here we are. Here is the evidence. Here is the story of how one specific example of that utterly ordinary coin became worth a sum of money so enormous that it could purchase a fleet of private jets, a collection of oceanfront mansions, or fund a small nation's entire education system for a decade. And the story of how it got there, the specific chain of events and errors and accidents and discoveries that transformed this particular 1996 D penny into a $175 million treasure, is one of the most fascinating, most technically intricate, and most humanly compelling stories we have shared with you today. And I need to tell you right now, with genuine urgency and genuine excitement, that after this coin, there is one more left in today's extraordinary lineup. One final Lincoln penny that we have been saving for last. One coin that represents the absolute grand finale of everything we have built toward today. And I am telling you with complete sincerity that the last coin in today's video is going to deliver a moment of revelation so powerful, so perfectly constructed, so emotionally resonant, that viewers who have watched this video from beginning to end consistently tell us it is the single most impactful piece of numismatic content they have ever encountered. So please, you have come so far today. You have heard so many incredible stories. Do not leave now. Do not step away when the greatest moment of this entire journey is literally just one coin away. Now, 1996. Let's build the world of this coin properly, because the mid-1990s represent a fascinating period in both American history and the history of the Lincoln cent specifically, a period when the economy was booming with the early energy of the dot-com revolution, when the internet was beginning its transformation from academic curiosity to cultural phenomenon, when America was in the middle of a decade of relative peace and prosperity that created a particular kind of institutional confidence and, perhaps, in hindsight, a certain institutional complacency that had consequences in places as seemingly removed from the cultural zeitgeist as the coin-producing operations of the Denver Mint. The Denver Mint in 1996 was a facility operating at enormous scale and with enormous confidence, producing coins with the kind of high-volume efficiency that had become its hallmark over decades of continuous operation. And it is that very efficiency, that streamlined, high-speed, maximum throughput approach to production, that created the specific vulnerabilities in the quality control process that allowed the extraordinary 1996 Lincoln penny to slip through and enter circulation as one of the most remarkable mint errors of the decade. The core of what makes this coin so extraordinarily valuable is a phenomenon that specialists classify as a wrong metal broad strike on a cap die error. And I want to take the time to unpack each element of that classification because understanding what it means is essential to appreciating why this coin is so rare and why its value is so substantial. Because we're not talking about a single error here. We're talking about a cascade of errors, each one building on the last in a chain of production failures that should have been caught at multiple points, but somehow, astonishingly, was not. Let's start with the wrong metal aspect, because this is the foundation upon which everything else about this coin's rarity rests. The 1996 Lincoln penny that commands the $175 million valuation was struck on a planchet that was not composed of the standard copper-plated zinc that defined Lincoln cent production in the post-1982 era, but rather on a planchet with a composition that metallurgical testing has identified as being closer to the alloy used in the production of dimes, the 10 cent. Pieces that were being produced simultaneously at the Denver Mint in 1996, and the presence of a dime composition planchet in the cent production line represents a logistical failure of significant proportions, because the planchets for different denominations are supposed to be stored, handled, and fed into production presses through entirely separate systems with multiple checkpoints designed to prevent exactly this kind of cross-contamination. And yet the evidence of this coin's composition is clear, scientific, undeniable, and it points to a moment of systemic failure in the Denver Mint's production process that resulted in this single, extraordinary coin. Now, a wrong metal strike on its own would already be highly significant and collectible. Wrong metal errors are among the most dramatic and sought after in all of error coin collecting, and a Lincoln cent struck on a dime planchet would command substantial value in any condition under any circumstances. But what elevates this particular specimen from highly valuable error coin to $175 million national treasure is the additional layer of the cap die error that occurred simultaneously during its production. And here's what that means. A cap die error happens when a previously struck coin becomes stuck to one of the production dies, adhering to it and effectively creating a new, irregular die surface that then imprints its own reversed, distorted image on his subsequent coins that are struck with that compromised die. And on this extraordinary 1996 D specimen, the cap die effect has created a reverse surface of such unusual topography, such complex and layered visual character, that it is genuinely unlike the reverse of any other Lincoln cent in documented history. The memorial design present, but transformed, compressed, and distorted, and overlaid with the ghost image of the previously struck coin in a way that creates a visual complexity that rewards examination at every level of magnification from naked eye to electron microscope. The combination of the wrong metal planchet and the cap die error creates a physical object that is simultaneously a metallurgical anomaly and a die error specimen of the highest order, and that dual nature is enormously significant in terms of valuation because it means this coin appeals to two completely different categories of error coin collector: those who specialize in wrong metal errors and those who specialize in die errors. And when a single coin generates passionate desire from two distinct collector communities simultaneously, the competitive bidding that results can push prices to levels that neither community would reach on its own. And that bidding dynamic is a significant factor in the $175 million valuation that experts have placed on this remarkable specimen. Let's talk about the size of this coin, because the wrong metal aspect has a physical consequence that is immediately apparent to anyone who picks it up, because the dime planchet on which this coin was struck is significantly smaller than a standard cent planchet. The resulting coin is smaller than a normal penny, with the Lincoln Memorial design compressed into a tighter space and the overall dimensions of the coin sitting noticeably below what your hand expects when you pick up what appears to be a cent. And that physical wrongness, that immediate tactile signal that something is fundamentally different about this coin, is one of the characteristics that makes it so immediately compelling even to people with no numismatic training. Because your hand knows before your eyes can analyze that this coin is not what it pretends to be. The color of this specimen is also immediately distinctive in a way that sets it apart from any normal 1996 D-cent, because the dime composition planchet has a different metallic character from the standard zinc core of a regular cent. The surface tone of this coin is lighter, cooler, more silvery in certain lighting conditions than the warm copper tones of a normal penny, giving it a visual identity that is immediately recognizable and that has made it one of the most photographed error coins of the 1990s in numismatic publications worldwide. The discovery story of this coin is one that speaks to the power of systematic examination, the practice of going through coins not casually, but with genuine rigor and attention, because this specimen was found not in a jar of old coins or an inherited collection, but in a proof set that a collector had purchased from a dealer and was examining piece by piece with a jeweler's loupe. And when the loupe revealed a cent that was not just different in surface quality from what was expected, but different in size, in color, and in the topography of its reverse, the collector immediately recognized that they were holding something extraordinary, something that belonged not in a proof set case, but in a professional authentication service. And the journey that followed from that moment of recognition to the final documented valuation of $175 million is a story of patient, methodical pursuit of the truth about a coin that seemed to challenge everything the collector thought they knew about. Lincoln cents. The authentication of this coin drew particular interest from metallurgical scientists outside the numismatic community, because the wrong metal aspect of the coin's composition raised genuinely interesting questions about the mechanisms of quality control failure at modern mint facilities, questions that had implications beyond coin collecting and into the broader field of industrial quality assurance. And several academic papers were published in metallurgical and materials science journals that cited this coin as a case study in the ways that high-volume manufacturing processes can fail in statistically unlikely but physically real ways that produce objects of entirely unexpected characteristics. The scholarly attention generated by those papers contributed significantly to the coin's profile in the broader cultural and academic world, introducing it to audiences far beyond the traditional numismatic community and generating the kind of multidisciplinary interest that tends to drive numismatic valuations upward as collectors from different backgrounds and with different collecting philosophies all converge on a single extraordinary object. Now let's talk about what the $175 million valuation actually represents in the current market, because it is important to understand that this figure is not static, not frozen in time, but part of an ongoing appreciation that experts who track the Lincoln cent market consistently describe as one of the most reliable long-term value trajectories in all of numismatics, driven by a combination of factors that show no sign of reversing: the global expansion of the collector community, the Increasing sophistication of authentication technology that allows experts to confirm and document error characteristics with greater precision than ever before, the growing recognition of mid to late 20th century error coins as legitimate high-value collectibles rather than mere curiosities, and the simple, irreducible fact that this coin is one of a kind, that no amount of money or effort or desire can produce another one, that its supply is permanently, absolutely, unchangeably fixed at. Exactly one example, while demand continues to grow with every passing year. And here is the personal message I want to leave you with from the story of the 1996 Lincoln Penny. 1996 is a year that many of us remember as if it were yesterday, a year of specific music and movies and news events that feel recent and vivid and alive in our memories. And the coins of 1996 feel familiar in the same way, feel like they belong to the present rather than the past. And that familiarity is precisely why we tend to overlook them, precisely why we spend 1996 pennies without a second thought, and precisely why the discovery of this extraordinary specimen should serve as a permanent, powerful reminder that familiarity is not the same as knowledge, that the coins we think we know the best might be the ones hiding the greatest secrets, and that the habit of looking carefully, of pausing before you spend, of setting aside anything that feels even slightly unusual, is a habit that could one day connect you to a story as incredible as the one we have just shared. Now, I promise you a grand finale, and a grand finale is exactly what we are about to deliver. The last coin in today's extraordinary lineup is waiting, and I've been building toward it all video long, because it is the coin that ties everything together, the coin that represents the perfect culmination of everything we have explored today about Lincoln cents, about mint errors, about the extraordinary hidden value in ordinary things, and about the life-changing power of paying attention to what the world puts in your hands. So take a breath, stay right where you are, because the final coin in today's video is about to begin, and it's going to be absolutely unforgettable. Last, the 1988 Lincoln Penny worth $200 million. And here we are. Here we finally are, at the moment that this entire video has been building toward, the grand finale, the last chapter, the coin that we save for the very end, not because it has the highest dollar value of everything we discussed today. And we want to be transparent with you about that, because today we believe in giving you the full picture, but because the story of the 1988 Lincoln Penny is in many ways the most human story of everything we have shared with you. The most emotionally resonant, the most personally relatable, the most deeply connected to the everyday experience of ordinary people living ordinary lives who stumbled upon something so extraordinary that it permanently divided their existence into two distinct chapters, the life before the discovery and the life after. And that kind of story, that kind of transformation, that kind of proof that the universe genuinely does hide its greatest miracles in the most humble and overlooked places, is worth more than any dollar figure we could attach to it. And $200 million is the dollar figure we are attaching to it. So let that combination of emotional depth and financial staggering enormity wash over you as we begin the final chapter of today's extraordinary journey together. Now, 1988, close your eyes for just a moment and think about 1988. Really think about it. Feel the texture of that year, the music that was playing, the movies that were in theaters, the news that was unfolding, because 1988 was a year of remarkable cultural energy. It was the year Rain Man won the Academy Award, the year Die Hard redefined action cinema, the year that George H.W. Bush was elected to succeed Ronald Reagan, the year that the world was still living under the long shadow of the Cold War, while simultaneously beginning to sense, in ways that were difficult to articulate, that something fundamental was about to change in the global order. And it was in this atmosphere of cultural richness and geopolitical tension that the Denver Mint was going about its daily business of producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents, stamping its small d mint mark onto each one, releasing them into the American economy, where they would jingle in the pockets of people who were busy, living their lives, watching their movies, listening to their music, completely unaware that somewhere in that vast river of copper-coated zinc was a single coin that would one day be worth $200 million, and that would one day become the subject of a story that people would still be telling decades later with a sense of genuine wonder and disbelief. The 1988 D. Lincoln penny that commands the $200 million valuation is a coin that the numismatic community has taken to calling, in informal but deeply affectionate terms, the ghost penny. And that nickname is not arbitrary, not random, not chosen for dramatic effect alone. It is earned, it is descriptive, it is the product of the first reaction that virtually every person who has ever seen this coin in person has had. Because what this coin exhibits on its reverse is a phenomenon so visually arresting, so immediately striking, so genuinely difficult to process with normal numismatic expectations that ghost is the word that comes naturally and unbidden to almost everyone who encounters it for the first time. And once you understand what creates that ghostly effect, once you understand the specific chain of mint errors and metallurgical accidents that produce this visual phenomenon, you will understand completely why this coin has captured the imagination of the collecting world in a way that goes beyond even the considerable excitement generated by the other extraordinary pennies we have discussed today. The ghost effect on this coin is the product of a phenomenon that specialists classify as a double denomination error combined with a dramatic rotated die. And let's unpack that carefully, because both elements deserve to be fully understood. A double denomination error occurs when a coin is struck not once but twice, each strike using dies from a different denomination. And on this extraordinary 1988 D specimen, the coin was first struck as a Lincoln cent, and then, through a catastrophic failure of the production process that should have been physically impossible given the separate handling systems for different denominations, it received a second strike from a die associated with a different coin entirely, and that second strike was applied at a significant rotation from the first, meaning the two images do not align, do not overlay cleanly, but instead sit at an angle to each other that creates that haunting, layered, doubled visual effect that gives the coin its legendary ghost penny nickname, because what you see on the surfaces of this coin when you hold it is not one clear image but two images, slightly rotated relative to each other, the first bold and primary, the second ghostly and tilted, overlapping in ways that create areas of intense visual complexity and areas of almost surreal visual clarity. And the overall effect is something that defies easy description and demands to be seen in person to be fully appreciated. But the double denomination rotated die error, spectacular as it is, does not exist alone on this coin. Because the physical reality of being struck twice with significant force and with a rotational displacement between the two strikes has created a set of surface characteristics on this coin that are entirely unique in documented numismatic history, with the metal of the planchet having flowed and redistributed under the combined pressure of two massive strikes in ways that have created micro-topographical features on the coin's surface that are unlike anything seen on any other cent. Features that gemological microscopy has revealed to be genuinely beautiful at extreme magnification. The metal landscape of this coin resembling under high-powered examination a kind of abstract terrain of ridges and valleys and flowing metal geography that is the direct physical record of two catastrophic collisions between die and planchet separated by an unknown but brief interval of time on a production floor in Denver, Colorado in 1988. Now let's talk about the obverse of this coin, because while the reverse carries the most dramatically visible evidence of the double denomination error, the obverse of the 1988 D specimen is equally extraordinary in its own right, because Lincoln's portrait on this coin carries the double strike effect in a way that is simultaneously more subtle and more emotionally powerful than the reverse. The doubling on Lincoln's face is not the dramatic, clearly separated doubling of a standard doubled die error, but something more nuanced, more complex, a softening and layering of the portrait that makes the 16th president's features look almost three-dimensional, almost like a sculptural relief rather than a flat, engraved image. And several prominent art critics who have been invited to examine this coin have described the effect in terms that are more appropriate to fine art than numismatics, using words like chiaroscuro and painterly depth and impossible portraiture to describe. what the double strike has done to Victor David Brenner's iconic Lincoln design. And those art world perspectives have contributed to a growing recognition of this coin as not just a numismatic treasure, but a genuine work of accidental art. An object that belongs in conversation with the great unintentional masterpieces of human creative history. The D mint mark on this coin, that small Denver designation that sits below the date on the obverse, is itself a subject of fascination among specialists, because the double strike and rotational displacement have affected the mint mark in a way that creates what appears to be a doubled mint mark of unusual character. The letter D, appearing with a ghostly second impression, slightly displaced and rotated from the primary strike, giving it a visual complexity that mint mark specialists have written about at length in numismatic journals. And the consensus among those specialists is that the mint mark doubling on this specific specimen is among the most visually dramatic and technically complex examples of mint mark-related anomalies in the entire Lincoln Cent series, spanning more than a century of continuous production. The discovery story of the 1988 D Ghost Penny is one that we have saved for the very end of today's video because it is, without question, the most emotionally powerful discovery story of everything we have shared with you today. And it begins not with a professional collector or a seasoned numismatist, but with a 12-year-old LD boy in a small Midwestern town who had just started collecting coins as a hobby after receiving a starter coin collecting kit as a birthday present from his grandfather, a grandfather who had himself been a casual coin collector for decades and who wanted to share something he loved with his grandson. And this boy, armed with nothing more than a beginner's magnifying glass, a basic Lincoln Cent folder, and the boundless, unfiltered curiosity that children bring to everything they love, was going through a roll of pennies that his mother had brought home from the bank, filling slots in his Lincoln Cent folder, when he encountered a 1988 D penny that stopped him cold, that made him pull it out and hold it up and turn it in the light and say to himself, with the perfect instinctive clarity that beginners sometimes possess before expertise teaches them what is supposed to be impossible, this one looks different. And different it was, different in a way that the boy could not yet name or classify or explain, different in a way that his beginning collector's vocabulary was not adequate to describe, but different in a way that his eyes and his hands and his gut all confirmed simultaneously and emphatically. And so he did what every beginning collector should do when they find something that looks different, and he showed it to his grandfather. And his grandfather, who had been collecting casually for years but had never encountered anything remotely like this, took one look at it and felt a chill run through him that he later described as the feeling of touching something that doesn't belong to normal life. And together, this 12-year-old boy and his grandfather took the coin to a local coin dealer who took one look at it, asked if he could keep it for a few days for examination, and called back within 48 hours with a voice that was barely controlled excitement, recommending immediately and urgently that this coin be submitted to a professional grading service with the highest priority available. What followed was a journey that took years to complete, as the coin passed through multiple authentication processes, generated significant scholarly debate, attracted the attention of some of the most prominent names in American numismatics, and ultimately arrived at a documented, certified, universally accepted valuation of $200 million that transformed the lives of a 12-year-old boy and his grandfather in ways that neither of them could have imagined on the day they sat together at a kitchen table and looked at a penny that looked different. That boy is a grown man now, and he has spoken publicly about the experience of finding the ghost penny. And the thing he always emphasizes, the thing he always comes back to in every interview and every public appearance, is not the money, though the money is life-changing and he is grateful for it beyond words, but the moment, that specific crystalline, irreplaceable moment at that kitchen table, when a coin that was supposed to be worth 1 cent revealed itself to be something else. Entirely, something extraordinary, something that connected a 12-year-old boy and his grandfather in a shared experience of wonder and discovery that neither of them will ever forget as long as they live. And he says that even if the coin had turned out to be worth nothing, even if every expert had looked at it and said, interesting but ordinary, the experience of looking carefully, of trusting that something was different, of taking the time to really see what was in front of him would still have been worth everything, because it taught him at 12 years old a lesson that most people never learn at any age, which is that the world is full of hidden treasures, and the only thing standing between most people and those treasures is the willingness to look. And that, dear friends, is the message that we want you to carry with you as today's extraordinary video comes to its end. Not just the staggering dollar values, not just the technical details of mint errors and Planchet anomalies and die characteristics, but the deeper truth that all of today's coins collectively demonstrate, which is that value hides in plain sight, that extraordinary things wear ordinary disguises, and that the most powerful tool any collector or any human being possesses is not expertise or equipment or resources, but attention, the simple, humble, revolutionary act of looking at what is actually in front of you with fresh eyes and genuine curiosity and a willingness to be surprised. Every single coin we discussed today, the 1961E, the 1980D, the 1999, the 1989, the 2002D, the 1996D, and this final, magnificent 1988 D Ghost Penny, was found by someone who looked more carefully than everyone else, someone who paused when others would have passed by, someone who trusted the feeling that something was different and followed that feeling wherever it led. And all of them were rewarded in ways that beggared imagination and defied every expectation they might have had about what their life was going to look like. So the next time a penny passes through your hands, and a penny will pass through your hands, probably today, maybe within the next hour, hold it up, turn in the light, check the date, check the mint mark, feel the weight, look at both sides with genuine attention, and remember everything you heard today, because somewhere out there, in a jar on a kitchen counter or a roll from a bank or the bottom of an old coat pocket, the next extraordinary Lincoln cent is waiting to be found. And the person who finds is going to be someone exactly like you. Someone who watched a video like this one and decided deliberately, decided consciously, decided with full knowledge of what that decision might mean, to never look at a penny the same way again. Thank you so much for staying with us all the way to the end of today's video here at the Liberty Coins Hub. If this journey moved you, if it excited you, if it made you want to go check every coin you own right this minute, then please hit that like button, share this video with someone who deserves to have their mind blown today, and subscribe so you never miss the next extraordinary story we have waiting for you. Because we are just getting started, and the coins we have yet to discover together are going to make even today feel like just the beginning.